have a great guest, I believe, joining us. And while I'm sure if we're connecting with her or not, Michelle, yes, okay, yay. Michelle Malkin is the author of this book. I'm holding it for you to see, and I'm going to read you the title. It's just an unbelievably good book. Please forgive all the sticky sticking out of the side. It is a book by Michelle Malkin called Open Borders, Inc., Who's Funding America's Destruction? And it is like an encyclopedia. I can hardly tell you how great and fact-filled this book is, but I believe we have Michelle Malkin online. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Debbie.
I need volume up, way up. Michelle?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I don't know if you were hearing. I said a moment ago, but your book, this new book of yours, is like an encyclopedia for anyone wanting to understand the nefarious forces at work in this country and around the world trying to interfere with America's ability to have secure borders. So first of all, congratulations on a great, great book.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was in many ways like writing an encyclopedia, and I could probably do new issues of it every month. But I wanted to compile as much information as possible, put it between two covers, because I think that there are so many viewers and listeners and readers out there who've been hungering for a resource like this, especially in the last 3 years since the illegal alien caravans that, of course, your state has seen lay siege to the southern border there, have escalated. These things, of course, have been going on for years. But I thought it was really important for people to understand that the subsidies are coming from everywhere. It's not just the left. It's many religious organizations, it's tax-subsidized groups, and there's a lot of corporate backing, Hollywood backing, and media backing of all of this deliberate immigration anarchy that we've seen overrun our country.
That is a great summary. I will tell our listeners, you know what I mentioned all the sticking out in this book. Among the many great things you do is break down all the different entities, internal, domestic, foreign, NGOs that are all playing into the astonishing just collapse of border security and also playing into the way the American public thinks about the border. So I'll just, I'll tell you, our connection is a little bit staticky, but I'm going to just ask this question, which was, I think when America watched the border, the caravans coming up from the southern border and just flooding our border, people just thought, wow, this is organic. This is just amazing. These poor people must be all starving, and that's why they are doing this. And so it made Americans both sympathetic to the caravans and assume that anyone trying to contain it, enforce the border, were people just kind of being mean or unsympathetic. And you really turned the argument on its head. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about this group, Pueblos Sin Fronteras. Probably not pronouncing it correctly. Can you talk about them?
Yes, they have been pinpointed as sort of the central organizer, right? The central community organizer for the caravans, and they definitely are a huge piece of it. Pueblos Sin Fronteras is nominally headed by a man named Ireneo Mujica, who is binational. In other words, he holds citizenship in both the United States and in Mexico. And I tried to contact him directly because I think the way in which he obtained U.S. citizenship may have been even fraudulent in and of itself. He tells local reporters in the Southwest that his family were seasonal workers and that he obtained amnesty during the 1986 Reagan amnesty. There was a special provision there for seasonal agricultural workers, but his biography is a little bit fuzzy about where exactly he and his family worked. Nonetheless, he got his U.S. citizenship. He was educated here in America, and he first started as a community organizer for illegal aliens in Minnesota, and then came back to Arizona and crisscrossed the border multiple times before he finally settled on his main job as a Sherpa, essentially, bringing over these illegal alien caravans. He also trained with Doctors Without Borders, and that is one of the non-governmental organizations that works not just south of our border, but also in Europe, to provide shuttle services and land directional services for illegal aliens, migrants, whatever you want to call them, people who are trespassing across our borders, who are boarding ships that are run by other NGOs in Europe, and then dumped on Italy's shore and other European shores. And Pueblos Sin Fronteras had its political and partisan roots in Chicago. And so I talk about the other sanctuary churches involved. There's another very famous figure, a multiple illegal alien deportee named Elvira Arellano, who sought and claimed sanctuary in one of the churches that is loosely affiliated with Barack Obama and the social justice organizing left. But I think what's important for people to understand is if they think that it stops with Pueblos Sin Fronteras, they are unfortunately, sadly mistaken, because there is a vast illegal alien shelter network that is run from Central America through Mexico all the way into the interior of our country. And unfortunately, many religious organizations, primarily the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops and the Catholic Church, help induce, aid, abet, and shelter illegal aliens, and then see their own financial benefits and profits reaped from it, because what they're doing is relocating an entire population of illegal aliens into our country who then fill their pews and their collection plates.
That was such a fabulous and substantive answer. And honestly, I'm telling our readers, this book is so filled with knowledge about many, many things. One thing I love that you did, Michelle, and we're talking with Michelle Malkin, author of this new book, which I just held up, Open Borders, Inc. You do trace so many organizations and the role of the Catholic Church and just so much detail. And it's kind of amazing because it's like an encyclopedia of information, and yet it reads, I found I'm reading quickly because it's so fast moving in the way you describe things. It's so thorough. One thing I love that you did is in this book near the end, I'm going to get the right page. Yeah, you have a conclusion chapter called Border Defenders Action Plan. And the reason I love this is I think many people watch the borders being a mess. They even read a little bit about these organizations and the VOLAGs, the voluntary agencies that keep helping resettlement here. And people feel like they can't do anything about it. They can maybe write their congressman and say, hey, I think we should reduce the refugee people coming, reduce the numbers, or we should make other changes. But you have the most concrete list of things people can do to actually try to challenge this kind of it's a conspiracy, maybe isn't the right word, but conspiracy of NGOs and Pueblos Sin Fronteras and VOLAGs to really have an impact on the groups that are enabling and perpetuating this. The hardest one you hit on is the very first one I want to talk to you about, where you were talking about no more, to try to be a border defender, no more donations to churches, nonprofits, NGOs that aid and abet illegal immigration. That, Michelle Malkin, is so hard. I'd love to have you talk about how impactful that could be if people would do that.
Well, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops takes in billions of dollars, and a large part of that is taxpayer subsidies, in addition to all of the huge collections during the National Collection Week for Thanksgiving, for example. And this money then just gets plowed into these illegal alien shelters, for example, that run up the entire spine of Mexico. Direct subsidies for shelters that are inducing desperate families to do desperate, dangerous things that enrich coyotes, that enrich drug cartels. And you have to follow the money to find the truth. And you have to ask yourself that when these radical left-wing bishops preach about welcoming the stranger, is it really about compassion? Is it really about practicing your faith? Or is what you're doing, the practical impact of it, sabotaging our borders in service of a larger social agenda that is often brazenly exposed by Pope Francis himself? This is a man who has designated himself as the number one anti-Trump resistor in the world. And the quotes that I've compiled in Open Borders Inc. over the last couple of years of Pope Francis, every single day waking up to find a pretext to attack our president for guarding our nation in the same way that the Vatican guards its own little nation state. I mean, the walls are high. There are bulletproof windows in the cars that the Pope travels in. If it's good for him, why isn't it good for us? And as one really astute immigration enforcement advocate within the Catholic Church, a renegade, said, and I quote it because I love it, "Even heaven has a very strict immigration policy."
Yes, ma'am. Michelle Malkin, I'm reading, honestly, I could spend about 3 hours, which we don't have, but all of what you laid out here, I think so many people are not aware of the details. And I think, as I say, the hardest thing for people, they think, what can I do? And then when the suggestion is, well, maybe you could go after your own church. And I will say the Lutheran Church, which is my family heritage of Lutheranism, I mean, they are as complicit as the Catholic Church in bringing large numbers of refugees to America, making money off of it, depositing them in some arena or area, and leaving them once they're settled in with no real focus on assimilation, no real focus on their on whether or not they're beginning to contribute to the American society or not. But back to your one last quick thing in this Catholic Church I was not aware of. Catholic Campaign for Human Development. You write extensively about that. And one thing you say about them, which I just had no idea, they're funding things like restorative justice efforts in public schools to chip away at effective discipline for disruptive students, environmental justice, campaigns for green jobs, a social justice league. I mean, the political advocacy attached to this Catholic, CCHD, Catholic Campaign for Human Development. I'm going to tell you, I don't think 1 in 1,000 Catholics in America realize that happens. And go. This is a closing. Any other thoughts you have on that subject? Please go ahead.
Yeah, CCHD has its roots in an alliance between a radical Chicago bishop, Bernard Shiel, and Saul Alinsky himself. This is not some sort of conspiracy theory about the left in the Catholic Church. And CCHD, as you mentioned, has become the social justice organizing arm of the Catholic Church. I think that there should be congressional investigations of the nonprofit tax-exempt status of many of these religious charities that operate as blatant political arms. And I also think that they should be criminally prosecuted for violating the many laws under U.S. Chapter 8 and of the U.S. Code 1324 against aiding, abetting, harboring, and sheltering illegal aliens. And, it is a difficult step, but it is a very simple first step to defund Open Borders Inc. in our own homes. And you can apply that same thinking to Hollywood. And I trace all of the money that Hollywood actors and directors and creative people are pouring into the illegal alien lawyers lobby to represent illegal aliens, all the way up to the Supreme Court for subsidized abortions, for the right to employment benefits, and the right to be protected in perpetuity from deportation. It is a lot to comprehend and to consume, but if we are to be prepared and if we were to get off the sidelines and actually do something about this, knowledge is power, sunlight is the best disinfectant, follow the money, and find the truth.
Michelle Malkin, I commend you again for just a fabulous book. Again, for our listeners, I'll hold it up. Michelle Malkin's new book, Open Borders, Inc., Who's Funding America's Destruction? Great book. You should buy it as an encyclopedia. Honestly, it's so filled with data and footnotes and understanding really what we saw at the southern border was not an organic uprising of impoverished people, clamoring to come to America for a new life. It's a very orchestrated, supported mission. Ultimately, Pueblos and Fronteras and others involved who actually have the very socialist mission of ending borders, of obliterating borders and having a globalist society. That thinking is at the core of Pueblos and Fronteras and other groups. It is an invasion, the term President Trump wisely chose, and it's up for the American people to repel it. So, Michelle Malkin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.